Hello, darling Janet. It is fantastic to see you.
Hello, Catherine. It's really wonderful to see you too. You always bring light to my days.
Oh,
I love your energy.
Thank you. Now, I always feel the same. When I knew that I was going to be seeing you, I just light up like a Christmas tree. I go, yes! Now, Janet, we're going to turn this around a bit because usually people get to ask me any question they want. But for fun, I want to ask you a question, and then I want us to have a conversation about that, if that's okay.
Let's do it. Anything with you is going to be good fun.
Okay, so for anybody listening to this, Janet is one of my most favorite people, and I haven't had, sadly, I haven't known her for very long, but she's qualifying in two things that are intriguing to me because of my work. And the one I want to ask Janet about today is, and I want to get this right, you're a trauma doula. So would you mind just explaining to me and to anyone that is listening to this, what is that and maybe why you wanted to get involved?
All right. I think I'll answer the second part first. I have done a number of mindfulness-based living courses gifted to me by a beautiful person who runs them. So I've done that course repeatedly. And within that, it's a group thing. We're sitting together. I realized the power of being heard in a non-judgmental, non-fix-it environment.
Yeah.
And the mindfulness course, of course, isn't about that, but that experience came through very strongly for me.
Yeah. And
then when I heard about this work, which is under the canopy of the red tent doula people, and it was explained to me what it was about, I thought, yes, yes, yes. I didn't really know anything about the course, anything about red tent. In fact, red tent has never appealed to me, but being heard, being listened to, and non-judgment was very important to me. So I've gone into this and I'm blown away. I'm completely blown away by the power of being heard and seeing that reflected again and again and again in participants in what they're calling circling in the context of the trauma doula work. So ideally, we would be in person, but I've not ever had an in-person one. It's all been on Zoom. So we're sort of here, UK, Brazil, all over the place. And it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And that no judgment and no fix-it allows a person to hear themselves for the first time often. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And for
it's
me,
so powerful, isn't it?
Yes, that connects so strongly with my other work, which is the craniosacral therapy, where I am not so much listening to words, but listening, yeah, and holding a person into hearing themselves and into being heard without dialogue.
Yeah.
And I'm finding them both magical. And I love the way that they work together for me. They're like two modalities which just harmonize for me.
Thank you for sharing that, because I mean, you already know that a vast amount of my work is based on listening and hearing. And it's so, the more I work with people, the more passionate I am about allowing people to hear themselves. How on earth can we grow and mature and have the real adventure of life if we're not being allowed to unravel and discover who we are? If when I look back, and one of the most significant things that ever happened to me, Janet, which, because you're sitting in Africa as we're doing this, I was in the bush, and every evening all these strangers would come together and they would be round the campfire. And in these magical environments, what I noticed was people behave differently. Somebody would ask a question, and because people were so settled inside themselves, they would just listen, and they would not overlay someone's chatter with questions. And so what I loved about meeting you for the first time was it was so obvious to me that you were firstly inside yourself, which for the sake of the listeners, I'll talk a little bit more about, but also you were listening and hearing deeply. And just for the sake of anyone that's listening, what I mean about being inside is one of the funniest things we did as students was the teacher came in, and she shocked us all because she said, "Where are you all?" And so some of us were thinking, has she gone blind overnight? Because we're here, straight in front of her. And she sort of deliberately allowed us to feel quite uncomfortable for a few minutes. And then she said, "I'm going to show you that you are not really here. You think you're here." And then she did this amazing group of exercises about showing people that they are in, for instance, the arguments that they had yesterday with their mother-in-laws or their daughters or their sons or their bosses. So that was days ago. So they're still there. Or they're doing the shopping list and the cooking forward. But there are very few people in that classroom, is what she showed us, that were actually completely present. And you are one of those remarkable people that have really, either you just knew it or you've become present and learned to be inside. And that's, these podcasts are all about how do you get the sort of life hacks, how do you improve the quality of your life? And one of the biggest tips that people can take from this, you and I just talking, is to just practice what does it mean to be inside yourself and to be present. So, yeah. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about the other thing you're doing, which, let me get this right, craniosacral therapy, which just sounds beyond magical.
It is. It really is. Just to go back one step, I'm hugely grateful for your beautiful words about me being in myself and present, because neither of those things have I felt about myself. And I've been working very hard to be present and to be in myself.
It's working.
Working. Well, one of the biggest and the first step to my awareness that I was not in myself was experiencing craniosacral therapy. I'd never heard of this. And the first experience was just completely weird. I actually said to the person, if I didn't know you and I didn't know it wasn't true, I would think that you'd put the foot end of my bed up on bricks because my head feels like it's going to explode. Just weird. But I wanted to come back after a while for more of that weird. And at one stage, she put her hands on my shoulders. And they just dropped and dropped and dropped. I was lying on the bed. And I just kept letting go and letting go some more until I really thought that if I let go any more, I would be liquid and I would just filter through the bed. And that gave me a sense of how much I'd been holding to try and keep myself together, which isn't actually a way of keeping myself together, because allowance is far better a way of staying together. To be in the moment is to be together.
Yeah.
And then in retrospect, I had craniosacral sessions over about 4 years, sort of randomly. I realized just how much it had helped me to become aware of me.
Yeah.
And that I, inside that facade that I was trying to hold together, had a value which I'd never allowed myself to see. Didn't even know it existed, actually, really. So for me, the craniosacral therapy is beautiful and magical and very important. I've also found it very hard to, I've been very shy. So to articulate things and to speak has always been difficult to me. And the craniosacral therapy is without words, or can be. Very few people seem to talk during a session. It takes you somewhere else. And so it's like hearing myself for the first time. And I'm being witnessed while I do that because I'm being held by the therapist. And it was so powerful. So for me, that's something that I want to allow back into the world. I want to grant that to other people like it was granted to me. That space to become aware of their own uniqueness and their value. That is really there. Despite what the world tells us, everybody has a unique flame, and everybody's uniqueness creates a whole.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
I love everything you said, it resonates. And I think what's beautiful is that at the moment, their educational system across the world doesn't necessarily focus on the importance of getting to know ourselves. And the focus is, it's one of the themes that I work with. We're pitched into more than, less than, rather than equal to. And some of these remarkable trainings and therapies that are what I call integrated, they all have something in common, which is that they bring you home, and they bring you home to yourself. And one of the things that you and I have talked about already is this sense of innocence. And what I mean by that is not religiously, but a sense of okayness. And many of us, including myself, I didn't grow up knowing I was okay. I was pitched into an adult life, I think carrying a lot of illusions about who in fact I wasn't. So maybe a bit like you, my shoulders literally and metaphorically were kind of up around my neck, and I mean, it to this day, it amuses me when people say that you, Catherine, you speak so well, because when I began speaking in a public setting, I literally couldn't breathe. I would just hyperventilate and go absolutely bright red, and I could not get my words out. And for someone who suffers from low blood pressure anyway, and I sometimes can't get the words out, you know, that was a really big problem. How I didn't keep on fainting, I don't know. But I think it just goes to show, the more you come home in the most extraordinary way, the less limits that we have, because we're able to get out of our own way. And the focus becomes more on serving another and sharing something that might be useful, but in humility, rather than imposing and overlaying. And I think if, you know, if my training, what?
I don't know what's right for you.
Yeah.
You know better. But there's something about being a conduit or facilitating that awareness, which I think we both do, which is what I would like to do, which was what was granted to me in my experiences that have led me along this path that I've loved.
I think, I mean, I feel quite sorry for, I guess I feel compassion for people that operate out of unbelievable arrogance. It's very annoying, and I get frustrated, but then I go into compassion, because if you've genuinely been taught that you're superior because of your trained knowledge, then you're on a hiding to nothing, really, because it becomes a very lonely place, a very empty place. You're kind of full on the outside and then empty on the inside, which I think a lot of this concept of wealth, you know, you can be wealthy education-wise or financially, or with houses or properties or planes or things. But if you haven't learned that we are all equal to, really, we're different, but we're equal to, then it's so easy to operate from arrogance rather than humility. And arrogance imposes itself. And rather than posing this wonderful and delicious question of what do you need? What would you like? Would you like to get to know yourself? Can I just be beside you, almost in a campfire environment, and go, you know, who are you? How wonderful to meet you. So it's a much softer, kinder, gentler way of being a practitioner.
Yes, yes. And in fact, that arrogance is if I am being arrogant, I'm turning away from myself. So I'm not aware of my own unique value when I'm being arrogant.
Yeah.
It's another facade.
Yeah.
And I think that so many of us, because our culture isn't accepting of all of us being unique and of value, struggle to believe that we have worth. And the idea of coming home to self. Self, that's the last thing I need. Let's get rid of self because I need to become something else.
Yeah.
But actually, my experience has been landing within myself is my becoming of something that is worthwhile just to be, even if it's only for me to be. It's been better than trying to pretend to be something that I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Janet. That's so powerful. And because I know that, well, I'd like to think that I know that we're going to be on a journey and we're going to have chats in the future. I'm just going to complete this time by reminding us all that we are called human beings and not human doings. So with that, darling Janet, thank you very much for spending the time with us all, absolutely, including me. That's the fun of doing this. Take care.